In the last episode, I told you about how late one night, while surfing some sailing and cruising pages, I accidentally stumbled across an abandoned yacht in Malaysia that was for sale for what seemed to be a bargain. The owner, a Swedish sailor named Henrik, had sadly passed away, and the yacht was being sold by his ex after sitting in the water abandoned for a couple of years. There were some hatch leaks, some mould and water damage, but it looked easily fixable. I had contacted the seller and got a bunch of information, but was this deal a bit too good to be true? More questions needed to be answered and fast, as other buyers were circling. FOMO? How cool am I? I know what FOMO is, because I googled it. It's fear of missing out. FOMO was almost causing me to just buy the yacht and book my plane tickets, but first I thought I'd better make sure I have the right paperwork, and this is where it got nuts. I asked Shafi to send any official registration, ownership or other documents, and she emailed what she could find. But when it arrived, I couldn't find any international or government registration documents. This was going to be a big problem. There were court docs appointing Shafi as the admin of the estate, old marina receipts, ownership documents from 2 years ago, a Swedish cruising club membership, but nothing saying that Henrik owned the boat. What followed was weeks of internet searches and reading up, trying to work out how, if I do buy this boat, I could actually transfer ownership and get her out of Malaysia and into either Indonesia or Australia without the right documents. At one stage I spoke to a broker in Malaysia, all the while being careful not to give too much away, like the model of yacht or location, as I didn't want to come this far only for a broker to steal the deal. And even he had no idea. Frustrated, I contacted the Malaysian government's boating authority, and they told me that without the proper documentation, I wouldn't be able to move Valkyrie around or out of Malaysia legally, nor would I be likely to get insurance. I was starting to wonder how Henrik had somehow sailed this boat from New Jersey down the east coast and south coast of the United States, through the Gulf of Mexico.
We're going to be changing the name to the Gulf of America,
the Caribbean, and through the Panama Canal, and through a bunch of small Pacific countries and into Southeast Asia without any registration. Did he just go dark and not check in anywhere? I had heard of yachts that had done similar things, but doing it across half the earth without registration or insurance, that was going to be something special. Out of desperation, I found Henrik's Facebook to see if I could track down any other ports of call and maybe contact marinas he had stayed in to see if they had any documentation. But there was nothing. No mention of his visits to any of these places, only some shots on unnamed tropical beaches, and only one shot where if you looked really close you could just make out that he was aboard Valkyrie. If I had have sailed the yacht solo through any of these places, I would have had a small stack of pictures of these exotic locations. But for some reason, Henrik was being very careful about what he made public, as you would want to do if you had an unregistered, uninsured yacht sailing the world's oceans. I was now a little more than intrigued by Henrik and Valkyries Journey. In my mind I saw Valkyrie, and Henrik sailing her like a ninja, a Swedish ninja, probably at night, with AIS and nav lights switched off, and even masthead and anchor lights off. Anchoring in beautiful remote hidden tropical coves and bays, provisioning in little towns and villages, and hiding from navies, police, customs and other authorities. The mystery kept growing, and I was starting to really like him. As I was trying to process all of this, I noticed that the Indonesian port clearance documents had listed Valkyrie as Swedish flagged. But could that be just because Henrik had a Swedish passport? I also noticed that Henrik had a membership with the Swedish Cruising Association, but that was a non-government group, and therefore would be different to a national or international government register. But even so, this was my only lead, so I decided to contact them. I emailed but got no response. Then I found a number online and called. Please speak English, please speak English.
Välkommen till Svenska kryssarklubben. Våra telefontider är måndag till torsdag 10.00 till 11.30, 12.30 till 15.00. Kansliet och butiken på Cylindervägen 12 i Nacka Strand har öppet måndag till torsdag.
Say it in English at the end, say it in English at the end.
11.30, 12.30 till 15.00. Tack för ditt samtal och välkommen åter.
Ah, crap. No English, and I couldn't even leave a message. It seemed like it was a dead end, until I decided to try one more time and recruit the only Swede I know, a former exchange student, friend, and high school formal partner of mine, Colleen, and whom I hadn't had a good reason to call in many years. After a nice catch-up on the phone, Colleen very generously offered to call them, and when she did, the mystery was then kinda solved. Colleen, if you're listening to this, thank you. You are my hero. So as it turns out, Sweden has no national government register for cruising yachts. Yep, you heard that right. Instead of an official governing body, the Swedish Cruising Association maintains a register of sorts. This register is accepted, sometimes reluctantly and with great scepticism, by various overseas authorities. A non-government register for international cruising. Who would have thought? Imagine the looks you'd get and trouble you'd run into turning up in a foreign country with a non-government club registration. If this works, I might just start up my own club and register my own yacht for $1. It's no wonder he was being so careful too. Well played, Henrik. Well played. With the information I now had, I now looked into what it would take to register and import Valkyrie to Australia. There's no other way to say this. Dealing with AMSA, the Australian Marine Safety Authority, and Borderforce, Australian Customs, was a bloody nightmare. I've watched a lot of sailing channels on YouTube and noticed that the fair majority of them coming across the Pacific tend to bypass Australia. It's always been a bit of a mystery to me. Why would you bypass Australia? With all the amazing beaches, natural beauty, great cities and towns. But dealing with AMSA and Borderforce now made it make sense. I won't go into it here, but I had a few questions regarding import taxes and Australian registration. But true to Australian bureaucratic form, nobody from AMSA or Borderforce was willing to give me solid answers, and you can't import a boat with maybes. For the record, when AMSA finally responded after a month, they said in extreme cases I could sign a statutory declaration and provide whatever paperwork and evidence that I could gather to make my case for ownership, and they would make an assessment of my registration application and make a decision. But there was no guarantees it would be accepted, and no refund on the application. Borderforce, on the other hand, when they finally responded, said the taxable value would be the proven purchase price plus the proven cost of transport to Australia. Although if they were suspicious of the proven purchase price, they could dismiss it and instate what they thought was a fair market value. So in other words, you might get yourself a bargain overseas, buddy, but it won't be by the time Borderforce are finished with you. And you're only going to find out once your boat is here and they inspect it. Sounds like a trap in a custom storage holding yard scam to me. So after smelling a bit of a rat, I had already decided weeks earlier that if I bought Valkyrie, I'd just do what AMSA don't want you to do and register in another country, namely the tax-free haven Malaysian island of Langkawi, where it would be also cheaper to have her repaired, maintained and stored. And it'd be closer to where I want to sail. Just an inexpensive direct flight away from Australia. What I'd save in storage and registration costs by doing this would more than cover any flights when I wanted to visit. And I wouldn't have to risk paying GST and duty taxes of over 20,000 Australian dollars for a $9,000 US boat. With all of that now semi-sorted and my nerves getting shakier by the day, I was tempted to either give up or just throw caution to the wind and buy the yacht. But one little detail was stopping me from pulling the trigger. The guy that put up the ad obviously didn't think purchasing Valkyrie for himself was worth it, and he was a marine surveyor. I thought maybe he's just busy, or has too many of his own boats, or doesn't want a project. I decided to ask him, and he told me that he was actually just too busy, and also that I just had to see the boat for myself. But he wasn't giving a lot away. By now, 6 weeks had gone by since I first saw the ad, and I was getting tired of the whole situation, so I made a plan. First, I'd make an offer to the seller, I'd agree to the asking price, but with conditions. The main condition would be a haul out and surveyor's inspection, which I would pay for to gauge hull integrity in regards to osmosis and condition of the sail drive and motor. I'd pay a deposit to let her know I was serious, and I'd get all this in a signed contract. I had already checked, and due to the surveyor's availability, the haul out and survey report were going to take a few weeks, which bought me some time. Those few weeks would give me enough time to educate myself just enough about inspecting a yacht that if it was a no-go, I'd be able to tell. Therefore, I'd aim to get there a week earlier than the surveyor and the crane company, which would give me plenty of time to do my own inspection both above and below the waterline, and enough time to cancel the lift out and survey if too much needed doing. At that stage, if everything went balls up, I would have lost weeks of work, but at least I would have learnt something, seen a new country, and I could just head down the road a bit to Thailand and order $1 cocktails till I felt better. Or worse. But if by chance Valkyrie was good, I'd stay put, spend the week enjoying Malaysia, begin cleaning up and getting to know the boat, and sourcing what was required to bring her up to scratch. By now, I hadn't spoken to Shafi for a few weeks. I thought for sure that Valkyrie was sold. I messaged anyway and waited nervously for what seemed like forever for her to reply, and to my relief, Valkyrie was still available. I immediately made the offer. Shafi accepted and an agreement was signed and returned. I transferred the deposit, did a little happy dance. Yeehaw! Then I bored Barry.
Just one of those.
No, not that one. The airplane, of course. And fly to tropical Malaysia to meet what could be my future home and base of travel and adventure for years to come. See you then.
I remember when I lost my mind.
Hey, you! Who, me? Yes, you! The idiot sailor wannabe who knows nothing. Ah, yeah, that's me. Wanna make your life a living hell? Well, it's already kinda... Look no further, I've got just the thing.
Okay,
Number 1. Find an abandoned yacht on Facebook that's usually worth $100,000, but a surveyor wouldn't even buy it for 10. 2. Make sure it's overseas, just to make it more difficult.
Ooh.
3. Be sure it hasn't got a survey, because why would you want to know it's seaworthy? 4. Make sure it hasn't got the proper registration documents either, so you can pull your frickin' hair out when you try to move it. 5. Buy it in a place that hasn't got a travel lift or haul out facilities at the marina, so getting a hull inspection's also going to be a complete pain in the arse. And 6 and 7, with all the previous boxes ticked off, then try to deal with the terrible Australian twins, Borderforce and AMSA. Or maybe the fact that you'll die of old age before you get any help or answers might actually save you from owning a yacht at all.
Yeah, bro, sounds awesome.
Ticked all the boxes? Congrats! You are now an official ignorant idiot sailor wannabe!
Woohoo!
Disclaimer, completing this checklist in no way qualifies you as an actual idiot, as you may have been one long before this.